Applause for live piano, brought to you courtesy of Steve Fowler. A multi-talented group, the technology department. Hey everybody, how are you? Excited to be here today? Everybody find a seat in the back? Want to make sure. All right. You know, all the good stuff is taped under the seats in the front. Just saying. So hopefully you all know me. I'm Chris Stengels, Director of Technology. We've got a great day planned for you. Wanted to talk with you a little bit about it, make some announcements, and get you on your way towards learning and developing and having a great time with technology. I hope you're all excited about it. We've been working really hard on it, and I learned early to start by giving thanks. Jess Piccone Cook, she's probably not even in here. She's probably still across the hall setting up. Was instrumental in bringing this thing together in terms of a tech wellness day. Tech and wellness to me really fuse well, right? What I hear all the time in my position is that technology is so new. Who has time for anything new? I'm so busy. I don't have time. You know, we get a lot of stress in the technology department from you all, and that's okay. We're programmed to receive your stress, right? But one of the things that I'm hoping we can do with this wellness initiative tied in with technology is find ways to be more well, right? Find a way to prioritize, to make sure that the things you aren't getting to are the things that are low priority for you. And they, lessen feelings of being overwhelmed, especially when new things like technology comes in. Because when new things come around, you don't want to be so overburdened that you have no chance of adopting them if they're the next greatest awesome thing, right? All right, so Dana Schmidt, are you here? No. Yay. Also instrumental, as well as all the other tech coaches. Can you guys give a round of applause for your tech coaches? Your tech coaches did a great job helping put this day together. We did a lot of Google Hangouts, and sometimes they're not fun when I do a Google Hangout. And sometimes I get double booked and miss the Google Hangout, and they still have the Google Hangout, so they're awesome. Also forgot to point out, hopefully you're all tweeting, I know, right? So you've all seen TechWellLebo. That is today's hashtag. In addition to, of course, being Lebo proud, TechWellLebo was invented about 1 a.m., and it is sticking. So, TechWellLebo, make sure all your tweets have it today. I also want to give thanks to Dr. Irvin in the back I saw and the rest of your principals who gave us this day, right? I really view this day as a gift. We in technology view this day as a gift. We want to do everything we can to not, what's the word I'm looking for? Give up on that gift, not to, treat it with the respect it needs and relish it, and I'm missing a good word, but it is a gift, and we want to make sure that we can make it the best day possible for you. So thank them for putting this day together. Also, the technology department. Let's give it up for the technology department, huh? A round of applause for the techs. Love it. Hug a tech. They work really hard to cater to my whims and my last-minute crazinesses, and they're all very patient and smiling about it. So make sure you all see them. They have a room later. All right. A couple of things I also want to talk about before we hand over the keynote speaker. October is Connected Educators Month. Who knew that? Let's just end this day. All right. October is Connected Educators Month, and the reason you will know that is because anybody know where you might have read that? If you didn't read it, where could you have read it? Far From Blogging, thank you. I heard a lot of those. Okay, so this is a shameless plug for my blog, farfromblogging.com. If you want to know what's happening in technology at Mount Lebanon and technology in education and random occasional thoughts, you should follow this blog because I'm not sending out a separate email. It's all in here. Okay, here we go. Other announcements about the day. Wellness. Check out the sessions. We have a number of them out there. We have the things posted throughout the building. At lunchtime, we're going to have some smoothies right across the hall here. And if you haven't got your flu shot, that's going to be down in the health office, 11 to 2, I believe. All right, other new things. Everybody excited? I can feel it. You're excited, right? Yes. All right. We're having a technology learning activity. What is that? That's going to be great. I'm not going to spoil it. I'll tell you later. We're going to have Ignite sessions, right? So who looked up what an Ignite session was after getting my email? A couple people. I saw 2 hands. That's fine. Ignite is a format of presentation, 3 minutes, 10 slides. We've asked 10 or so of your fellow teachers to share a passion with you. They are very brave and wonderful in doing so. It's going to be a very great session. A few of us went to a conference in Philadelphia this summer where we saw this format, and if all goes the same way, you're going to be sitting in your chair just overwhelmed with an hour's worth of passion and excitement that'll hopefully get you ready to just go running into those rooms with the sessions. At the end of the day, we're also going to have a different format of session. Final 45 minutes of your day. You should have all gotten emails by grade level and or special area, and there's signs posted all over on what room to go to. But one of the big pieces of feedback we get on this day, right, is follow-through, right? Now, I know a lot of you are going to raise your hand if I ask to identify with a statement that you have a great day, it's all new tech, it's awesome, and then the day's over and you got to go teach tomorrow. So, whew, it all goes, right? And this notion of follow-through and continuity of a new idea. So, one of the things that we've designed the end of the day for is for you to put forward initiatives that you would like to continue working on through the year as a result of what you've done today. And I just wanted to let you know that it's going to be our goal to fund as many of those things, whether it be by money or support or both, as possible. So I guess I'm asking you at the end of the day to really put care into what you are saying you'd like to do with what you learned today, because we are going to make sure that we can make it happen for you. And I'll be connecting with everybody who submits something throughout the year. So it's not just today. Today's great because we're all together, right? But I want to be a part of this through the whole year, and I want you to be a part of this through the whole year. So that's how we've structured the end of the day. We also have a little survey at the end of the day with the door prizes for those who answer. Thank you. Offered to us by Byte Bites. This is going to give us a lot of data about how we use technology in our classrooms and in our schools and in our students' homes. The parents are going to be taking a version of this survey. Students are going to be taking a version of this survey, I think grades 3 through 12. Also new this year, this is exciting, right? A lot of new stuff. Google Apps for Education. Google Classroom, who has played with it? Okay, it's pretty exciting. I invite you to play with it a lot more because brand new this year, we are able to use Google Classroom. And it is free, and it is integrated with Google Drive, and it is integrated with everybody's Google accounts. And I think it offers a lot of promise, and I think we're going to see a lot of examples as we move on of things where it's actually a time saver. Okay, and it's not just one more thing. So I'm very excited about it. More up in room 208. Fingers crossed. Okay. Also new this year, Safari Montage Multimedia System. Who's heard of Safari Montage? All right. Safari Montage used to be offered by the AIU. Who's aware that it's no longer nicely accessible through the AIU? Right? So it doesn't matter, right? Because we have our own instance of Safari Montage here. We got a session in room 112. We have Janet Baxter coming out from the AIU who's going to be working with Mona Rice. And they're going to show you this new system, and we're excited to roll it out this year. It's going to deliver content, it's going to deliver live stream, etc. All right, last announcement, then I'm going to hand it over. So your desktop computers and their big CRT monitors, right? Who loves their big CRT monitor? All right, Steve Fowler in the back. Anybody else who loves their nobody? All right, so this year, I'm happy to say you're all getting flat screens. You get a flat screen, and you get a flat screen, and you get a flat screen. So that's my Oprah moment. But we're going to take care of that hopefully this fall. Thank you all for your patience as we have been trying to find ways to creatively budget to get as much dollars into the student technology hands as we can. So I want to introduce our keynote speaker, Pernille Ripp. We first met her, me and a few others, at ISTE in Philadelphia this summer. She is a teacher, speaker, mom, author, collaborator, and she's great. And I have a number of things. She introduced, how many of you are familiar with, Global Read Aloud? Okay, so Pernille founded Global Read Aloud. And how many of you are aware it also kicked off today for the sixth year? So it kicked off today, and she's still here with us. How awesome is that? That's a big draw. That means Mount Lebanon gets the goods. But she has written a couple books. She is super awarded. And I'm just so excited to have her here and have her talk to us about passionate learners. And I just want to hand it over to her if I could. But if we could all welcome Pernille Ripp to the stage. Yeah, I will transition you over.
Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here. It is hard for me to leave my classroom, but for coming and working with other teachers, I always try to make the exception because we have to stick together as teachers. I'm going to see if I can set this up. Perfect. So this is my home away from home. This is Oregon Middle School in Wisconsin. I started teaching there last year as a 7th grade teacher, but before that I was an elementary teacher, so you are my people. 4th and 5th grade was where my heart belonged, and I never wanted to be a 7th grade teacher. I thought I applied for a 6th grade job. I was wrong. That's what happens sometimes when you get really excited about applying for a job in the district that you really want to be in. So when they called me and said, "We want to interview you," I told my husband, "But I didn't apply for that job and I don't want to go there." And he said, "Well, just go and try it." And so I did. And I walked into the building and I immediately fell in love. I don't know what I did. I immediately fell in love with Oregon Middle School because I walked in and I felt like I was home. And so I accepted the job as a 7th grade English teacher, hoping that I would figure it out, and spent about 5 months, this was early in spring, talking myself off the ledge while I was thinking, why did I do this? I don't like 7th graders and they're going to eat me alive. Teaching 7th grade has been my biggest challenge and my greatest one yet, because when we talk about vulnerable kids, those are our middle school kids, but it's also our elementary school kids. And so I'm so glad that I've had the experience of teaching middle school, because now I see where the kids end up when we teach them after elementary. And I see what happens to those kids that don't like reading and don't like writing and don't like coming to school, because they come to me in 7th grade and they don't even tell you anymore. They just sit there quietly in our classrooms. And that's the thing. I am here today to tell you that I did not have dreams of being a teacher at all. In fact, when I was a teenager, I screamed at my mother that I would never be a teacher like her, because that's what we do when we're teenagers. And so I grew up in Denmark, and I moved to Wisconsin, and I started bartending after I had dropped out of college, and I thought I had a pretty good life. Until I met a boy, and that boy asked me what I was going to do with my life and get a grown-up job. And so I started thinking about it, and I realized that the one thing that I'd sworn I'd never wanted to do was the one thing that I wanted to do more than anything. But I was so scared of being a teacher because of the responsibility it carried. And yet I signed up and I started going to college, and the first time I walked into a classroom as a practicum student, I knew that this is where I needed to be, and that somehow I needed to find the courage to become a teacher. And then every single day I had to remind myself of that courage. And so I've been teaching for the last 8 years, and it has been the most life-changing experience for me. This is me. I had just come into school. I'm pregnant here, which my students didn't know. And this is the night before my very first year of teaching, and I thought I was ready. I had spent so many hours creating this 3-dimensional welcoming bulletin board. Notice the wordplay. Because I thought that this is what it meant to be a good teacher, because I looked around my elementary school and I saw that this is what all the other teachers had done as well. And so I wanted to make sure that I was a good teacher like all the other good teachers, and I wanted to make sure that I was one of those good teachers that I had been taught about in college. And that's the thing. Good teachers graded. Good teachers assigned homework. Good teachers rewarded. Good teachers told students that if their homework was not done, then there would be consequences. Good teachers talked, and when students stopped listening, we talked louder, because maybe they just couldn't hear us. And I figured that since I'd signed up to be a teacher, and this was me teaching 4th grade, then I'd signed up to follow those rules, because that's what we do as good teachers. And it had worked for so many teachers before me, so I assumed that it would also work for me. So this was me. I knew how to wield my grades like a weapon. I taught like I thought I should. I scolded kids that didn't actually pay attention. I thought that it was their fault when they were disengaged. And I wielded my grades, not as proof of great learning, but as a tool for compliance. Until I met a kid, let's name him Jared. It was my first day of my 2nd year of teaching, and I had just finished my orientation spiel. I'd done it 3 times. I was exhausted. I was ready to go home, because you all know how nervous we are that very first day when we're meeting parents and students. I was about to go home, and in walks this mother dragging a child that looks much too big to be a fourth grader. And I thought to myself, oh, great, now I have to talk to her. And I know that sounds terrible, but I was tired. And she marched up to me and she said, hello, I don't know what you're going to do with him because I've given up. And I thought, oh my. And the boy stood there with his slumped shoulders, and she started to tell me all of his flaws. He doesn't like school, he won't do homework, I can't get him to read, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't care. He's not as smart as his little sister, so I don't know what to do. And I thought to myself, well, I know what to do. I'm going to change him. I am going to make school about him again. Except I didn't. Because I followed the rules of what it meant to be a good teacher. And so when Jared would come in and he again wouldn't have his homework, I took away recess under the guise of wanting to work with him. But I also wanted to make sure that he knew that I was serious when he needed to do his homework. And when he didn't turn things in, I would tell him, well, guess what? That means I have to give you an F because you haven't put in any effort. And fourth grade was the first year for letter grades. And so he got Fs and zeros, and his shoulders slumped more and more. And he would still try to smile and crack jokes with me because kids have so much faith in us as teachers. And yet I kept doing more of the same. We did book reports that year, 6 of them I remember, but not just a book report. We would read the book, they would get to choose. Then they did the report, they did a presentation, and they had to create something. Because who doesn't want to do 3 different things when you read a book? Jared, of course, didn't actually read any books. His mother had warned me of that, and she was right. And so on the 5th one, the 5th book report, when he came in with a mangled, chewed-up poster, I wanted to jump up and dance. Except when he handed it to me and I realized that he hadn't followed the guidelines and he didn't have a report. And I wasn't sure that he'd actually read the entire book. And so if I followed my rubric, he got an F because he hadn't followed the rules. And I knew that I had to follow the rules for him. And so I very nervously handed him the poster back with an F on it. I didn't write it in red. And I said, nice try. And Jared never handed something in again that year. And he left my classroom more broken than when he first came. And that's when I realized that if I kept following the rules, this is what was going to happen with my just fine students. And so I knew that I couldn't be this good teacher anymore because the rules weren't working for me. And if they weren't working for me, then they weren't working for the kids that I was teaching either. I used to think that when students were disengaged, it was their own fault. That maybe they just didn't want to be good students. That maybe they just didn't feel like learning. But now I know that this is so far from the truth. And that this makes us feel comfortable when kids aren't learning in our classrooms. And it's not about comfort. It's about making sure that kids are learning. And so I know now that when students are disengaged, it's their way of telling us that we need to change the way we're teaching, even if that's hard to believe. And the thing is, I wasn't a bad teacher. The parents love me, the students love me. I still have contact with my first group of 4th graders. In fact, I saw the kid Jared a couple years later, and I apologized to him, and he looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you apologizing for? I'm fine. He wasn't, but he thought he was. But I realized that even though my kids were growing, their test scores were good, we were ranked one of the best districts in Wisconsin, and boy, did we ever love telling the papers about that my just fine teaching had led to just fine students, but those students won't change the world. And I realized that I needed to change my teaching or I was going to lose these kids. And so I did. Blame it on me being from Denmark or being a direct descendant of the Vikings. Go Steelers, right, Chris? But I had always had a stubborn streak. But I knew that this was not how I was meant to teach. That somehow I had to find the courage to break the rules or I would be responsible for destroying the love of learning for many. And that's the thing with our dreams. They're too easy to dismiss because we get wrapped up in our to-do lists and what we need to get done. We face the pressure of all the curriculum that we have to cover and all of the kids that we have to reach. And we think that we'll get to it later, that our dreams will still be waiting for us when we finally find time. But that's the thing. We need to start wrapping ourselves up in our dreams and carve out the time to just think of the what-ifs. And at the end of my second year of teaching, when Jared had left my room and I stood in my empty classroom and I thought, that's it. I am done with teaching. I quit. That's when you start to realize that dreams are there for a reason. They're not just there because of a fancy notion or because you think that somehow some teachers will figure it out. And so I started to dream that day, and I started thinking about what if students didn't have homework? What if they didn't get a grade? What if they could show mastery in many ways? What then? Would they even know what to do? And I'm telling you, I'm here today to tell you, yes, they do. And there is a way that we can change education. And here's the thing. This is personal. I have 4 kids of my own that clearly love to pose for Christmas photos. And they will be the products of our American public school system. 4 kids that have so much curiosity that deserves to be protected. Yet my oldest, Theodora, 5 days into her career as a kindergartner, she came home and told me that she hated school. The same child who had played school and pretended to be a teacher, she now hated school and she was ready to be done. So I did what any parent probably does. I chalked it up to her being tired. After all, starting school is hard work for anyone, let alone a kindergartner. On the 6th day, she told me that she still hated school, also on the 7th. And on the 8th day, she told me her teacher hated her. On the 9th day, she said she had a stomach ache. And my heart dropped, because this was no longer just a crazy idea. It had become her reality. And in her reality at 5 years old, school was not a place that was meant for her. So that day, 5 years ago, before Theodora started hating school, I asked myself a hard question. And this was the question that I asked myself. And this is the question that I ask myself every single day when I go in and teach my 7th graders. Would I want to be a student in my own classroom? And boy, did I cringe when that little voice in me said no. Because the 9-year-old me would have wanted choice and voice. They would have wanted to come in and feel like they had power. And so I started to dream of a classroom where kids had a voice. And then I had to figure out how to make that dream come true. The thing is, we're too busy at times to acknowledge the perception that our students have of school. We often tisk kids, or we try to convince them that school is not as bad. But the thing is, as I learned from Theodora, their reality is their reality. And we cannot change their mind unless we realize that that is what they think. And we have to acknowledge it and give them power and then ask them, how can we change it? How can we make this better? Rather than just sweeping it under the rug and telling them they're wrong. Instead, we have to prove it. And so when I went home and told my husband at the time that I was going to quit my job, he quickly told me that I had no chance of doing that because had I seen my student loan bills. And so he said something that stuck with me for so many years, and it's something that drives me as well. And he said, you can't change the students, but you can change yourself. And that means you can change the way you teach. And I don't think he realized just how magnificent those words were to me, because he was right. I think too often we get so caught up in what we should be like when we compare ourselves to others that we forget how much power we have over our own actions and what we can do in our classroom. And so this is something that I always shout as loudly as I can, because this is the one thing that we have to remember. I could change the way I taught. I just had to find the courage, because kids are checking out of our classrooms and out of our teaching. And we can blame the world, and yes, therein lies some truth for sure, but we have to also look at what we're doing. How are we creating classrooms and schools that students don't want to be a part of? And I can tell you this, it's really hard to look in the mirror and have those conversations in your own head. So I started thinking about how I could break the rules just a little bit. And it wasn't that someone had handed me a rule book, but there certainly were expectations in my school for how we did things, because that was what had gotten us the test scores and the results that we wanted for so many years. And so I felt like a crazy person that summer as I dreamed. Society force feeds us what school should look like. And so it's hard to go out of that box. We are so indoctrinated with how a traditional classroom should look like from our college years, sometimes from well-meaning colleagues, and sometimes even the years of experience that we bring into our classrooms. So when we bring in new ideas or even just trust our instinct, we immediately think that what we want to try will never really work. And that was something that I had to face head on. And here's the thing, I'm not here today to tell you to teach like me, because my system works for me. And there is no magic system that will reach all children. Trust me, I've looked for it. But there is you. You are the magic system that can reach all children, because you can start listening to your students. And you can start catering to the needs of the students that you have in front of you. And that's what I realized, that I didn't need a system. I didn't need to read another book at that point. I just needed to start listening to myself and that little voice inside of me that was telling me there's got to be a better way. Because every day we're faced with a choice of what type of educator we want to be. We are given a new chance every day to reinvent the way we teach. This doesn't have to come at the beginning of the year. This doesn't have to come January 1st when we have our New Year's pledges. Every single day, every single minute of our day, we can change the way we're teaching. I know that I make a choice every single day to be the best teacher that I can for the kids that I have right in front of me at that point, and so I hope you do as well. I started to realize that some of the well-meaning intentions that I had in my classroom was actually harming the love of learning that my students carried in and their natural curiosity. My student Jarrett was a perfect example of what we can do. Do we want to be the ones that follow the same path every single day, even if we know that we'll only end up being just fine? Or do we want to be the ones that have the courage to go on a different path, not quite knowing where we're going, but we think it might be great? I know what I choose every single day. And so I realized that one of the biggest things that I could do and one of the easiest changes I could make was to start saying yes. Yes, you can sit over there. Yes, you can read that book. Yes, you can use that tool. Yes, you can go and take a water break without me actually giving you a pass. Yes, you can go to the bathroom, and even if it is just because you need a break, that's okay, because that's the trick we use as adults, and we forget that. And so I started saying yes, and then my students realized that because I was saying yes so much that when I did say no, there was a reason for it. And so when I did have to say no, I would always tell them why I had to say no to that request or that question. And all of a sudden, my students started taking responsibility and control over the things that they needed to. And so I realized this, that even the smallest changes can make a monumental difference. The day I told my students that they can sit wherever they want, you would have thought I'd given them $1 million. It's the little things that we do in our classrooms that the kids will remember, even though that's not where we spend most of our time. We spend most of our time thinking about the big picture, about what we need to cover and how we're going to cover it and how we're going to get through everything. And yet it's the day-to-day small decisions that we make that leave the biggest impressions on the children that we teach. Good. That's the slide I wanted to get to. And so I think this is what my students have told me over and over and over again, that even though I say that this is our classroom, I cannot mean it if my classroom says, "Welcome to Mrs. Rip's room." Those things make a difference. Those things make an impression on our children. And here's the thing. Trusting yourself and your students and sharing the power of the classroom with them can actually lead to great things. We can change education from within. We can change the way our students feel about coming to school, but we have to take the first step. And so I realized that it's not how your classroom looks, it's how it feels. And what we hang on our walls matters more than we think. I felt crazy when I threw away all my motivational posters. How would kids ever know that they were supposed to hang in there or stay positive or no whining allowed beyond this point? But the thing is, my students told me very quietly that they only read those posters when they were really bored. I put them in the teacher's lounge. I shouldn't have, because of course I should have just thrown them out. And I saw them in other classrooms and thought, oh, a missed opportunity. My classroom now is blank before the students come in, which I know that is scary to some people, especially coming from an elementary background. I always felt like I had somehow failed the first day of school if I didn't have the great bulletin boards. Yet my bulletin boards now, 4 weeks into school, are filled with the work of my students, but more importantly, it's filled with their words and what they need, and everything comes up and goes down however we need it. How we set up our classroom speaks volumes about our educational philosophy. So if you were to walk into my classroom, you would probably be terribly disappointed because it doesn't look cute. It looks functional. And it looks like there's breathing room for the students to move and to spread out and to do what they need to. And then there's a lot of books, a lot of books. I also started to realize that I needed to grow some thicker skin. Because once you start asking students what they don't like about their education, they will tell you. And so I realized that instead of trying to force kids to fit my type of teaching, I needed to change my way of teaching to fit the kids that I had. And that's something that really took a lot of thinking for me. And of course, now when I look back at it, I go, well, duh. That makes perfect sense, but that's not what we do day to day. We force our kids to fit into a certain box, and if they don't fit into that box, then we stand there saying, I don't know what to do. Well, the answer is change the way you teach. I also realized that I had an unhealthy relationship with silence, and that I thought that if my classroom was silent most of the day, that meant that we were learning. And so I spent a lot of time shushing, and I didn't care what they were talking about because they needed to be silent so they could hear me instead. And so when I decided to change the way I taught, I thought, we're going to get really loud. Except after a year of that, I was ready to quit again because it was always loud. And I realized that that's not what we need to strive for. We need to strive for different levels of volume, and more importantly, we need to teach our students how to figure out what the volume should be of the classroom, not because we hung a poster on the wall and we're pointing to our 3s or our 2s, but because they realize that at this moment they need quiet reflection, or at this moment they need to be up and excited and running around the classroom sharing their knowledge. And so that starts with a conversation. We talk about that in our classroom. What should the learning sound like on the very first day? And the kids know, but they can't believe you ask them. And so I realize now that learning is messy, and sometimes learning is quiet, and sometimes learning is in partners, and sometimes learning is coming from the teacher. And that's okay. We need to create a classroom where there's room for all of that. Because here's the thing. My students have taught me over the years that what I do matters a lot more than what I say. And so if I walk in and I control everything and I stand at the front of my classroom, I have now communicated to my students that I am the one in power in here. I am not the one giving up power, and they are just here to be vessels of my knowledge. But that is not what I want to give them, and that is not the impression I want to give them. We have to, And so if we say we truly care about our students, then we have to truly care about how we teach them, not just what we teach them. So what do your actions say about you? Do we create classrooms where students have the right to ask questions, where they actually have the right to ask you why they're doing something, and we don't just give them the answer of, because you need it for next year? My students do this all the time, and guess what? Every single time it pushes me to think about, why are we doing this? What is the real outside of school application of this skill? And once in a while, it is just to create a foundation, and so I tell them that. You will need this to further understand something more complicated. Without this, you will not be successful in this other thing, and my students are okay with that. But they want to have the right to at least ask. I thought that change would just happen because I changed my mindset, but it's not true. Every single day I'm reminded that I need to change the way I teach, and that even now, 5 years into having led this type of classroom, that every single day I'm still making a decision to change, because yes, it gets a little bit easier every year, but the kids change, and so we have to change right along with them. Change is something I pursue every single day, and the first way I do it is by asking the students, what do they need? I realized this as I reflected back on what my students were telling me. that I was so obsessed with making sure that they grew and that they had the 4s rather than the 3s, because we're a standards-based grading district where I am now, that I didn't care about their dreams because we didn't have time. But the dreams are what we should be focusing on, because that's what school is really about. It's about giving kids the tools that they need to reach their dreams and giving them the tools to spark that curiosity that will make them these lifelong learners that we talk about in our mission statements, but then forget how to actually create in our classrooms. We have more power within our classroom than we think. We may not choose what our students have to learn, but we can choose how we teach it. And part of that choice needs to be including student voice. So I know we're faced with standards, because I certainly am. I am in the state of Wisconsin, and boy, is our educational system is in upheaval every single year. We are faced with new tests, new mandates. There isn't a week where a new initiative isn't passed down. I know that we feel powerless, but we're not. And that's something important that we have to remember. So if I can ask you to please do one thing today, this is it. Ask the students what they want to learn. Ask them how they want to learn it. Ask them why reading is hard, or why writing sucks, or why they think that math is not for them. Ask them how you can be a better teacher. And then once you ask, smile, listen, and do. Because they are watching you to see your reaction to their truths. And if you try to sweep them under the rug, or if they see you somehow look offended, they will clam up as quickly as they started speaking. Listen to their voices, and then amplify those voices using social media, and then do as you can. And here's the thing. We forget in our own pride as teachers that students have the right to create noise when the education they're getting is not working for them. Because when students start becoming silent, then they've already given up. So I would much rather have kids that ask me in the middle of my class, why are we doing this? Rather than have kids that just assume that what we're doing matters, and they're going to sit there quietly. We cannot get as offended as we do in education, because this is our responsibility. And when students speak up, they're giving us the biggest gift that we can. They're giving us immediate feedback that what we're doing may or may not be working for them. But do remember that when you give students a voice, it comes with a caveat. You must listen to that voice and not be offended. We have to grow a little bit thicker skin. Now, this doesn't mean that students get a carte blanche to just tear you apart and tell you how they really feel, but it does mean that we have to listen to what they say. And I can tell you from experience, it is not easy being told that something you had planned is boring. But at the same time, the fact that a child finds the courage to tell you that tells you about the community that you have established in your classroom. In the end, I would rather have a child feel comfortable enough to express those feelings than for a child to tell me whatever they think I want to hear. So this is Tech and Wellness Days. And so, wait, what does this have to do with technology? Well, I realized a few years ago that as much as I wanted to spend most of my time having conversations with students, that I still had to cover content, that we still had to teach. And so I needed to give them an outlet for how they could get their voice out to the world. And so I gave them a blog. And I said at first, okay, just start sharing all of your work on here. But my students didn't want to share their work. They wanted to share their opinions, their voices with the world. And so a fourth grader came to me and said, hey, can I write about why I don't like homework? And I thought to myself, uh-oh. And I said, sure, because I decided to say yes instead of no. And so this kid, who could barely spell, ended up writing about homework and how it was stopping him from actually spending time with his family. And he didn't understand it because most of the homework he was doing, he couldn't do without support at home anyway. So why was he doing it? It wasn't practice for him. And I tweeted it out using the hashtag Commons for Kids. And all of a sudden, this kid who didn't feel successful in school had 19 different comments from all over the world asking him more questions. And they weren't just comments from kids. There were comments from principals and teachers asking him to please tell them more. Please share more of your truth. And so quickly my student said, wait, can we write about homework too? Can we write about standardized testing and how it hurts our eyes? Can we write about how we really didn't like when you did that one lesson because you really should have done it this way? And I thought, my goodness, when have I started? But I said yes. And so my students have been blogging for the last 5 years, and as have I, and they have shared their truths with the world. The blog has given them a platform to now share their truths about education. My students have now become homework for pre-service teachers, which they find inherently amusing when they get these long comments about how they really like their arguments, but have they thought about this from some random college student in South Alabama? Technology gives us a way to give power to students that they didn't feel they had before. And especially in the age that we live in now with social media, where students are already using social media. I remember the first time I found one of my fourth graders on Facebook, and I looked at him and said, first of all, you're not 13. Second of all, why can I find you on Facebook? I don't want to be your friend. I said, why not use that power for good instead? So we have to become social media role models for our students too and harness their power for good. So this is Mac. He's one of my kids from last year. Last year I decided on February 5th for my students to take pictures all throughout their day and then document it with the world. And it was called Student Life Challenge. And kids all around the world did the challenge with us. Mac decided not to take pictures because he didn't feel like it. But if you look at his first line, he says, I don't have photos to show you about my day, but it was really boring. And as you keep maybe reading this, I want you to go down to the last line. English is hard, but it's not the worst. I'm his English teacher. So the fact that he had the courage and the guts to post this on a blog, knowing that I had to approve it and hit publish, tells you how much he trusted me with his truth. And the sad thing is I could have pulled 90 more posts up like this, that their days are boring, that even in my district that prides itself on being a personalized learning district who's really trying to make it about students again, this is the reality that our students face. That they come into class, they sit down, teaching is done to them, and then they're really, really tired when they go home. And so I thought I either had two choices when 128 posts came through from this day, and it was a lot of the same, and I can tell you it was the most depressing 128 posts I've ever read in my life. And I thought either I completely pretend this didn't happen and just hope nobody else sees it from my district, or I email this out to my superintendent, to my director of learning, and to the rest of the district, and that's what I did. Because my kids have a right to have their voices heard, even if it's not the truth we want to hear. And instead what happened was that, yes, people were shocked, but they also started a conversation of what are we not doing for these kids, and how can we change their day to day. So the tools that we use in our classroom should amplify student voices, not control it more. Now, knowing that we are in elementary class or elementary schools, that also means that, yes, we have to protect them. But in that protection, make sure you're not stifling their voices or changing their words. So are we creating environments where students will tell us how they feel so that we can change the way that we teach? I love this quote from Ernest Hemingway because we too often don't trust our students. We say that we do, but we really don't. So we have to start trusting them and their reality. If school is an awful place for them or where they feel they don't belong, then that is their reality, and then we have to fix it. So creating passionate learners doesn't mean that the teacher is not needed. When I think of passionate learning environments, I often think about all the things it's not. It's not just differentiation. It's not just chaos. It's not letting students go and do whatever they want. Instead, it's taking the time to figure out every single kid in our rooms and then figuring out how we can teach them and they can learn best. It's making sure that they have a voice wherever they can get one, and that they have a voice in how they learn something, how they show mastery, how they're assessed, and where their path will take them. So last year, as I was rewriting Passionate Learners, which is one of my books, and it just came out 2 weeks ago, I asked my 7th graders for permission to share their truths with the world. And I actually thought they would say no. And instead they said, yes, please. And can we also be a part of your presentations? And then they said, can we Skype in? I said, no, you can't. Can we do a video? And I said, well, sometimes technology doesn't work so well. So I said, give me what you want me to tell you. And so my students told me to tell you this. When I asked my 7th graders, what is the one thing you wish all teachers knew? This came up over and over, and I thought, my goodness, how simple is this? And this is what they wish teachers knew. So I had to dig a little bit more, and I said, why is this so important? They said, because it shows us that you trust us. And it shows us that you think that we will make good decisions. And I said, well, what about when you don't? Because sometimes they don't. And they said, then fix the problem with those 2 people or 3 people, but leave the rest of the class alone. Too quick, we take our punishments and put them out on the entire class rather than just the few kids that need a good talking to. So when my 7th graders make poor decisions in their seating arrangements, which they do sometimes, instead of going over and saying, you can't sit next to each other, I say, is this working for you? And they usually go, yeah. And I say, well, it's not working for me. Oh. I said, you need to prove it to me. Okay. And if they don't, then the next day I move those few kids. But this came up over and over. And my 7th grader said, you ask us to discuss, to share personal things, but I really need to trust the people I do that with. So please let me choose the people that I do that with. We assume that our students will be irresponsible with the choices that we give them rather than that they will succeed. And I think as a parent, I know why as well. Because we don't think they have it figured out yet. But the thing is, I found out that even kids as young as 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, even kindergartners can actually make good choices as long as we model how to and also give them a chance to talk about it. I started doing this a few years ago. Boy, did it change my perception of what I was asking students to do. Now, I have to say that in my classroom and in our classroom, we don't really have a lot of homework. I ask the students to read 20 minutes outside of English class. There's no log. I trust them. I can tell who's reading. And I also make them a deal every single year that if they come in and they work hard and they give me their best attention, then my promise to them is that they do not have to work outside of school. And my kids do. Very rarely do kids have homework. And if they do, it's because they made poor decisions, and then that is a natural consequence for them. And yet, I started doing the assignments that I was giving them in class, and I realized that that cute little project I had them doing wasn't a cute little project at all, but was a multi-day, very extensive thing. My students now know that whenever they have an assignment, I have to do it as well, and I can't go back and use last year's assignment. I have to recreate it. So last week when my students did their superhero speeches, I was the first one to go up there and do my superhero speech. And then they got to critique me just like they critique each other. And they're not very kind. We're working on it. They said I don't talk like I'm excited, apparently. So I'm working on it right now. Please do your own homework. My kindergarten daughter, who's now a 1st grader, came home with her first day of homework, and it took her half an hour to do. And I thought, okay, I don't think the teacher knows that right now my daughter is spending a half an hour doing homework in 1st grade. And we're not home until 4:30. She was finally done at 5:15, and looked at me and said, can I please go to the park now? She goes to bed at 7 o'clock. I thought, yeah, you can, but soon it'll be dark and you can't go to the park at 5:15. And so please, please, please do the homework that you do. My kids also said this. When I asked them, what else do you wish that teachers knew about homework? And they said, if I need the practice, then I need the practice with you. And if I don't need the practice, then I shouldn't have to do the work. So we really need to start differentiating the kids that we do give homework if it is indeed practice. And then we need to start looking for opportunities within our classroom to actually figure out if they've mastered something right then, rather than being worried about are they doing it outside of school. My students also said, you tell us to have good lives. You tell us to do sports, to eat well, to get sleep, and yet we sit and do hours of homework and then we can't do any of those things. So which one do you want? Do you want us to do the homework, or do you want us to have good lives? I had another child that said, I work so hard in school. When I come home, I'm just done. And I feel like I can't rest. And so I get more and more stressed out, and I get more and more anxious. 2 weeks ago, I was in Michigan, and I was at a conference also speaking to teachers. And when I left there, I was so exhausted because I had been paying rapt attention all day to the teachers I had spoken to. I had sat down most of the day, and I thought to myself, my goodness, this is what we ask our students to do every single day. And we forget just how hard it is. It's so hard to pay attention all day. I work in a district that is moving away from letter grades to standards-based grading K through 8. Right now we're in a weird mix period where semester grades are letter grades and then quarter grades are standards-based. But I think that this is so true for what Brooke said, that we really, really think that we have figured a kid out simply by the grades, and we haven't, because all it tells us is a number. I realized this as I moved away from grading my students, that if I already knew what grade a child would get, then why did I have them do the assignment? Because I kept telling my husband, I could already make you 3 piles. And if those piles were wrong, it was probably because they got a lot of work or help at home. Don't assign it. The minute you send stuff home, you lose control over who's doing the work. And therefore, the grade that you assign something no longer is valid. So my kids tell me all the time that grades are an opinion and not a true indicator of what they really know. So we need more ways to provide feedback for students. I have my students self-assess on every single assignment and have them reflect, give them written feedback. I teach 125 students now. I can't sit down and do one-to-one conferences like I could in elementary. But that feedback that I give and that self-assessment that they do, that's what matters. And I always have them self-assess before I do something, because I don't want my assumptions of their work to skew their own perception. And then I would rather be skewed by their perception, and then we can have a conversation. The thing is, the minute you put a grade on something, it's done. It doesn't matter what you say after that. So if you want students to keep growing as learners, don't put a grade on it. Or at the very least, don't show it to them yet. Have the conversation first. In fact, one of my kids who was a 4.0 student told me that the only thing that her parents cared about was the grade. They didn't care about the work that she had put in. They didn't care about the learning that she had done or how she had challenged herself. All they saw was the 4. And she said, I don't feel like they know me as a whole person because of that. And I'm enabling them to do that as a teacher. What labels are we creating for our students? What do they overhear us say? Because no child comes to school thinking of themselves as bad at math. No child comes to school thinking of themselves as a struggling reader. They get that from us. And they get it from the grades that we give them. They get them from the conversations that we have. They get it from the creative grouping that we do in our classrooms when we call it the blue group or the Eagles or whatever group we call them in. They know which group is the bad group. My students do a reader's profile at the beginning of the year so that I can learn their reading truths. And one of the things I ask them very specifically is, are you a bad reader? And my students will say, yes, I am, because I'm always in the bad reader group. We need to start having courageous conversations with our students. And yes, if we need to group children based on their ability, then explain to them that this is not a bad reader group. And not give it in language that they've heard before. We shouldn't sugarcoat it. But we can say to our kids, yes, you are developing at a different stage than some kids, and I am here to help you. But there is nothing wrong with that. I think of my own daughter who is a struggling reader at the moment. She doesn't know that. She just loves going with her other reading teacher. And that's on purpose, because the school that she goes to now doesn't tell her that this is special or that this is pull out only for some kids. We use public shaming so much that we've grown immune to it in our classrooms. And I used to do it too. Put your name on the board, move your stick, flip your card, move your clip on my behavior chart. We use public shaming as we try to control the acts of our students, and instead we should be focusing on community. 5 years ago, I threw away all of my punishment. I threw away all of my rewards. We now do impromptu rewards for all of the kids, because being rewarded in school is not something you should earn. It should be an inherent right if you're there and you're trying. We need to make sure that the way that we're differentiating for kids doesn't create different environments where students know who is the bad kid and who is not. I still remember one day when I was teaching 5th grade and I was standing in front of my classroom. My classroom was the last classroom as you exited the school, and a kindergartner came up to me and he said, Mrs. Ripp, guess what? And I said, what? And he goes, Peter was on yellow today. And I thought for a moment, your name isn't Peter. And then I realized that Peter was another student. And I said, oh, yeah? And he said, yeah, he's never stayed on yellow. It was November. Why that child knew anything about how Peter was behaving dumbfounds me, because that is not the right of any other children. When we publicly shame or show behavior of other kids, we're telling kids who the bad kids are, and that is not information that they're privy to. We have to remember how we would feel if we walked into a classroom and we saw our own child's name either flipped to red, written on the board, clipped on a chart where it says not having a good day. I know that I would be really upset, because that's a private conversation between me, the teacher, and my child. One of the questions I get asked a lot whenever I talk about student voices, well, students in kindergarten can't really do this. I can see you doing it with 4th or 5th graders. But here's the thing, as the parent of now 1st graders, yes, they can. We just have to change the way we're questioning. I told you about my daughter and her hate of school. We ended up taking drastic measures because we knew that no matter what the reality really was, and the reality was her teacher didn't hate her. Not at all. Her teacher loved her. We could not change her mind. And so we ended up taking her out of that district, our home district, and putting her into my district, because we knew that we had to change the way she felt about school. The thing is, she found a teacher that loved her and that saw her for everything that she was. And that teacher helped her find her voice. So on the last day of school, as I cleaned out her backpack, I looked through her memories of kindergarten book, and this is what I found. And I got a little choked up. And of course, spoken as a true 6-year-old, she goes, what? And I said, you like school? Yeah. Can I go to the park now? But here was the child who was coming up with excuses at the beginning of the year, now wanting to be a teacher again, now playing school with her siblings and telling me how much she was going to miss her kindergarten teacher. The same kindergarten teacher that knew that my daughter is a little bit crazy. She doesn't play by the rules that girls are supposed to follow. She wants to be up and moving and dancing and doing stuff at all times. And instead of saying to that saying to Taya that you don't fit in, the teacher gave her jobs so she could be up and moving. And she asked her, will it help you if you stand up while I teach? And Taya would say, yes, it would. She gave my kindergarten teacher a voice by asking the right questions. And that's what matters. I can't ask kindergartners, well, how do you think I'm doing as a teacher? But I can certainly ask them, how did you learn best today? Did this work for you? Was this a good experience? I've given up trying to find perfection in teaching. There's no such thing as perfect teachers. Nobody else is perfect. We all have our flaws, and that's what I blog about too. I blog about all the screw-ups that I have in my classroom because I don't want to be seen as a perfect teacher, and I tell those stories here with you. I strive for authenticity instead, because what I want is passionate students. And I just can't figure out why we're making it so hard for kids to be passionate. And a lot of it has to do with the rules that we have in our classrooms. I realized a few years ago as my students were blogging that I had created this illusion of a perfect student. The child that wants to create, the child that wants to make, the child that wants to change the world. Until one of my 5th graders at the time looked at me and said, "I don't want to change the world, Mrs. Rip. I just want to get through today." And I thought, you know what, you're right. Because some days we have the energy to change the world. Some days we have the energy to make a big commitment to doing things that are outside of our classrooms. And other days we need to allow students just to follow from point A to point B and be okay with that. So not every kid wants to change the world. Not every kid wants to create. Not every kid wants to invent a new path or even make something. Some kids just want to be told the path. And that's okay too, because when we start personalizing our learning and asking students what they need in their education, that means we have rooms for all of the kids, not just the ones that we're setting free, not just the ones that we think are all untapped mad geniuses that just need some cardboard and some clay to create something. I think I've learned this the hard way, because 5 years ago I had to take responsibility for what I had done, because there was no one else to blame but me. Just as important, I had to make sure that my future students would leave our classroom still loving school, with passionate curiosity, not afraid to try something new. I had to dream of a new kind of teaching that centered around what the students needed and not just what the teacher, me, wanted. So do you teach based on how you're most comfortable or on what your students need? Because the two aren't necessarily the same. So I changed, and you can too, because I'm nothing special. I'm a 7th grade teacher from Oregon, Wisconsin, who doesn't quite understand how I made it all the way to Mount Lebanon with you guys today. And if you want permission to change, then have mine. You have the right to change the way you teach. And the truth is, not every kid loves school after I'm done with teaching them, but at least I haven't made their hatred bigger. And that's something that I'm very proud of. I take responsibility for my own actions as a teacher, and I realize the damage I can do. I accept that what I do today may make the difference a few years from now between a kid staying in school or dropping out. Even as an elementary teacher, think of the power that we have. I believe that there was one way to do school to kids. Now I know that school needs to change, and we have to change it from within. My path was unknown when I started, and it still is, because changes every year depends on my students. This group is so different from my kids last year. This group is the sweetest group. Last year they weren't very sweet, but boy did I love them. Part of that change needs to be about including the voices of our students, because school can no longer just be done to our kids. They must experience and own it. And so one thing I made myself promise is that I never marry an idea, I date it. And so ideas change frequently in our classroom depending on whether or not they work for the kids. What matters is, in the end, is that we did try to change, and we did try to right our wrongs. And we don't punish ourselves. But we recognize that once we understand that what we've done in the past was hurtful for children, we cannot do it again. We fight for change within our system, and we fight for our students by giving them a voice to fight with. So find a way to start asking your students what they need in your educational experience, and then find a way to amplify their voice so that they can inspire new teachers, new principals, new administrators, because our need for change is that match that will light the explosion. Some people may say that there's no hope, that the educational system in America is broken. I know I see all the headlines. I say there is hope, that amongst all of this fear, all of this uncertainty, and poorly considered reform at times, especially in Wisconsin, we can still look at our students and see them rise. So when it all seems to be too much, too dictated, like you have too much to do, think of the students, because think of their potential to be passionate learners. Think of the good we can do for them every day when they enter our buildings and we tell them good morning. And when we end the day by saying, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your voice with me. Thank you for being part of our room, for being part of something bigger than us, and for placing your faith in me as your teacher, and for fighting for change by speaking out. Because we are the change. We are the change for all of those children whose lives have been determined by assumptions, circumstance, and test scores outside of their control. We are the change for all of those teachers who don't think they have a voice, because you do. So bring the focus back on the kids, improve teaching conditions for all of your students, and keep our students passionate and curious. Give them a voice within your room so that the whole school may hear them, and then connect them globally so that the whole world may hear them. As Chris mentioned, today the Global Read Aloud kicks off. It was an idea I created 6 years ago on a summer nights, thinking, why not do a global book club for kids? That first year we had 150 kids listening to The Little Prince and connecting. Today, 525,000 students around the world started the Global Read Aloud. Oh, you don't need to clap for that. It's not me. It's not my kids. I have 128 doing it. So stand up for yourself and your beliefs. They matter, and so do you. Speak up, because as each voice joins the chorus, we become louder. Blog, write to your paper, talk to your community, start a conversation about how we need to change school and spread the word, because change will come if we continue to fight for it. Try your own ideas, steal my ideas. Be proud if they work. Be proud if they fail, because at least you tried something. You may be just one, but think of how far one person's words can go, the ripples they can start, and the waves they can become. And trust me, I know that speaking out and trying to change education is terrifying, but I find it more frightening to stay silent, because silence means that we agree with how the educational system is. Silence means that we're okay with being just fine teachers. My youngest daughter, Augustine, showed up 10 weeks early, weighing a little less than 4 pounds. For 6 days, they tried to stop her imminent birth. And during those 6 days, a doctor came down from the NICU to tell me what would happen if she was born. And in that conversation, I realized, as he was telling me about the potential learning disabilities that she might face from being born so prematurely, that her future might be affected, and that we wouldn't even know until she was much older. Faced with many weeks in the NICU, we inevitably talked about what being born premature can do to your brain development and what types of disabilities a child like her might have, particularly how her method of learning might need to be different than from non-premature children. Having her made me realize that we urgently need to create classrooms where all students can learn, no matter what their start in life was, no matter what they go home to, no matter what they have to overcome. Teaching all children is a personal mission to me, and that is why learning should be personalized and passionate as well. We have to teach all of the kids, not just the ones that we're taught how to teach. This summer, I went in for her 18-month NICU developmental checkup, and at the end of it, it's an hour-long test where they ask her to do stuff. The nurse looked at me and she said, "Guess what?" And I said, "What?" She said, "She's perfectly average." And I wanted to cry, because perfectly average was the most amazing thing we'd heard. I run by this quote from Alice in Wonderland. Because what if today you decided to not just be inspired by others, but also started to add your own ideas? What if you took that one idea that's been running through your head at night that you're a little bit afraid to share, but maybe you shared it with someone today? What if you just decided to start believing in your own ideas today? What if instead of saying no to yourself, you just said yes? Just this once. What's the best thing that can happen? I also live by this quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald, because it doesn't matter where you are in your teaching journey. You have the right to start over at any time. It's never too late to be whoever you want to be. And my students remind me of that every single day. So if you get a chance, take it, because we don't need more money to change the way we teach, even though that would be nice. Sorry, Chris, but we don't need more technology either to create passionate learning environments. It just helps us to make it easier. The biggest thing is we need to just change first. So take your dream and your need for change and do something with it. It's not too late to reinvent yourself, and it's not too late to make a difference in the lives of the children that you influence. And if you're just starting out, if this is your first year teaching, or even if it's your 30th, don't be like me. Learn from my failures and be the change. Give the classroom back to your students. Teach all of the students you have, not just the ones that fit the mold. And finally, ask the students what they want to tell the world and be their mouthpiece, just like I am today. And so therefore, I'm going to end with words from one of my students. Thank you.
Pernille Rep. Hello. Pernille Rep. Thank you. Thank you, Pernille. A number of years ago, I went to a conference where they offered a session afterwards where it was a continuation of a discussion, and everyone in the audience at the keynote had such ideas and inspirations and things they wanted to talk about more. So I've tried to make an effort to make sure we always have that when we have keynotes. We did it last year, and again this year. I hope you all have a chance to take one of the 3 sessions this afternoon to continue the conversation with Pernille. Any questions you have, further discussion, anything that made you think that you want to maybe talk through. She'll be in the library during the sessions this afternoon. So, push back, please. Yeah, push back. She loves it. So, thank you for coming for that. Okay, we have an activity, and nobody knows what that activity is because I've been guarded about it. And I'm just queuing up the slide that will talk everyone through it. Is everybody ready to get up out of their seats? It's wellness. You can't sit all day, right? So, technology learning activity. You ready? There are good prizes, and it's not just a flat screen because I already said everybody's getting one of those, okay? Here's what you get. I'm not telling you, but it's good. I need you to form teams. And we consternated, and we said, should we give random numbers under the chairs, and should we assign based on some formula with your last letter, first letter of your last name? And you guys would all break that and go with your friends anyway. So go with your friends anyway, but max team size of 4. All right, last year we had all of kindergarten get together, and then I had 13 prizes. It was horrible. All right, so max team size of 4. All right, you need to come up with a team name. You need to make a Google document. Someone on your team better know how to make a Google document. If you have 4 people that don't know how to make a Google Doc, don't make a team. All right? On that Google document, I want you to put your team name. I want you to list your team members. All right? And then I want you all to hit those classrooms that are going to be open this afternoon, because in each one of those classrooms is a number of pieces of paper with a QR code. And when you scan that QR code, if you don't know how to scan a QR code, make sure somebody on your team knows how to scan a QR code. All right? When you scan the QR code, you will get directions of something that'll give you points. Do those things, document that you did those things in the Google Doc, you will get the points. All right? At the end of the exercise, share your Google Doc to me. Okay? Every room that has a session this afternoon has QR code in the back. Or somewhere in there. Ross scattered them around. If you can't find them, it's Ross's fault. But they're in there. All right? Everybody ready? All right, go do it.
Hey, everyone. Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice. One person from each team is going to come up and get an activity monitor. When you are done with your activity, please bring these back because our high school students will need these come Tuesday. But we are going to be keeping track of your moderate to vigorous physical activity time during this for one person who will be representative of the team, as well as your step count. So once you form your team, come on up and grab a monitor from me.
All right, let's keep the energy going. Let's keep it moving along. I talked about it a bit this morning. I want to make sure that I'm clear about what our next phase is. This is a presentation format that a few of us saw at ISTE, and many of you have seen at other places. It's called an Ignite. And what I challenged the teachers to do who are going to be presenting to you, and principal, was to share with you a passion in 3 minutes with a maximum of 10 slides. And if it had anything to do with technology, all the better. So you'll see some overlap, but that wasn't my challenge, right? So my challenge and the idea with technology is to view technology as a tool to helping you get to where you want to go. So the goal with this is to share where these people want to go, where they have gone, and what inspires and drives them. So let's get them all up on the stage. We're going to wait in the wings. We're going to go 3 minutes at a clip, and it's going to be pretty fun. I hope you all enjoy it. But let's get them all up here. Come on. And let's applaud them, please, because this is a very courageous group. None of them knew what this was except for 2 who had seen this format before, and they still decided to come. So, and then somebody take a picture of all us out on the stage, too. Ah, see, because you weren't going to stick around for a picture at the end, were you? So let's get the picture up front. Come on. Come on. Everybody. All right. So this is, come on out so they can get a picture. This is everybody who's doing a Ignite. All right? So one last round of applause. Somebody take a picture, please. Nice. Okay. All right, now you can go inside. All right. So we randomized it, and then I changed the order. So first teacher to go is going to be Dana. You guys ready? Let's kick it off.
Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dana Schmidt. I teach as part of the FLES program here. So I'm going to be talking to you today about the flipped classroom. Nikki Gill introduced me to the flipped classroom last year, and I thought this would be a great place to use it with the 5th grade students. The first semester of every year, we only get the 5th grade students for Spanish class once a week. That's 30 minutes, and it's really not that much time. And we said to each other as the FLES team, like, we want them speaking more in Spanish. We want them to have more time in class with activities. So I said the flipped classroom is going to be a great place for that. Now, the flipped classroom is where you take your direct instruction, you put it in a video format, and the kids watch that on a blog, maybe on a class Facebook page. But as I said, this is how I'm doing with the kids. It's with the 5th grade students, and I'm about 5 weeks in right now. It's working pretty well. So far, here's why I love it. It's been very, very time efficient. Even if students do not watch the video at home, they are able to come in and still watch the video on our blog in the classroom. And here you can see a study by Dr. Lodge McCammon, and it shows you that the average elementary school teacher in a lecture uses up about 23 minutes. Well, that's because you're repeating, can I go to the bathroom, can I do this, can I do that? Well, if you have the kids doing their direct instruction lecture in a video, it only takes about 5 minutes. And it's like having a clone of yourself. If somebody's not understanding, you can direct them back to it. They can pause it. They can restart it. I don't have to personally repeat myself over and over and over and over again. I can direct the kids back to the videos. I also have so much more time to work with them. So far, the 5th grade students have had 3 different flipped classroom videos, and I've been using those videos to give them a lot of the direct instruction so that when they come into the classroom, we have more time for activities. I can help the kids who need more help, and I can challenge the kids who are getting it right away. Now, the kids love it because they know exactly what they need to do for homework. I'm not giving them practice. Instead, they're going home, they're watching the video, they're coming in. I'm saying, do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns? So at home, it's a 5-minute video or less. They have more time now in class to do activities. Just last week, I had some kids on computers. Those kids were the ones who didn't do their homework. I had some kids on Chromebooks. I had other kids doing a speaking activity, and I had a 4th group of kids then doing a interactive notebook. And the parents seem to love it so far. I've gotten a lot of great positive feedback because there's a lot of transparency with it. They can see exactly what we're doing in the classroom. So come check out a session later. I'll be presenting first session. Nikki Gill's going to be presenting the second 2 sessions, and she's awesome. So I'll talk to everybody soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm Rebecca Thomas. I teach 3rd grade at Howe, and throughout my presentation, you might be a little concerned, thinking, what does this really have to do with technology? But I'll get it there. Okay. There we go. My passion is child development and early childhood education. 3rd grade's like the cutoff. I told my principal I really don't want to go any higher, so don't please ever put me any higher. For me, it started off with my undergrad work at Duquesne. I went into my classes and I was learning about these theorists such as Piaget, and what they were teaching us really resonated with me. I was able to reflect back on my own experience as a child in school And luckily at that time I had a nephew who was right at that age, so I was looking at him and thinking about what he's experiencing, and it all clicked. So by the time I was finishing my grad work and my undergrad, I was so excited to get in the classroom. You have all these great ideas, and then you finally get there and you realize there's so much more. And it's so easy to get bogged down. This was my desk Friday as I was getting ready to leave. And that's what it's going to look like on Monday when I come in. But being in those situations, you realize you've got to take a step back. And there's so much more to it. None of us went into education for any of these things. Those are just necessary evils. For me, I realized I'm here because I love to teach. And when my students realize that I love to teach, then I'm happy. Because I'm not here for standards, I'm not here for PSSAs, I'm here for them. And that was a little drawing one of my students did. I didn't make that myself. I'm not that artistic. I'm here for the kids. I'm here for the interactions I have with them every day. We do have standards, we do have these goals for them, but for me, it's not just those academic goals. From what I learned in my undergrad, there's so much more to it. And in Mount Lebanon, we are lucky. We have very, very strong curriculum, and we've had a lot of people there working behind the scenes to ensure that it's meeting the standards and all these new demands. We're still meeting those demands while still making sure our children are getting what they need. And we have all been through Atlas, so we know cognitively we're meeting those demands of our kids. We're pushing the kids who need that extra push. We're helping the kids who are struggling. But as I said, there's more to it. It's not just teaching standards, not just teaching the academics. We are teaching children who are growing in so many ways. And we need to keep that in mind when we teach. We need to make sure we're giving them the breaks so they can move. As the quote says, you get 20 minutes and then they're gone. And I even think about the little guys, 20 minutes is a lot. You might be getting 5. So making sure you're giving them opportunities to move. For a child to be told they have to sit on their bottom, in their chair, feet forward, pulled in, it's not realistic. As adults, we can't do that. I mean, we need to get up at these things and go take a bathroom break, take the walks. And we need to make sure that we're giving kids those opportunities as well. And also there's the social aspect to child development. We are social creatures. As human beings, we don't thrive independently. We thrive by interacting with each other. And children learn that in school. So we need to make sure we're giving them appropriate opportunities to interact. And that's where technology comes into play. We can set up centers where kids can work on iPads and you can think, oh, they're all by themselves. But with the different apps, they can have opportunities to set different goals and kind of compete with one another, and they help each other through it, working in small groups to do a reading project and then show their learning through something engaging such as the technology. And there's just some of my sources. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. This is so nerve-wracking. Where are my Lincoln friends? Hi, guys. All right, I'm here to talk to you today about dynamic classroom furniture. Now, believe it or not, I'm one of the old dogs at my building, and once you get a couple years underneath your belt, you start to notice things about your students and ways that they are changing, and I started to see different things. I started to see my students lying on their desks and sitting with their knees up, crouched in their seats, kneeling on the chairs, and I thought to myself, what's going on? There was constant feet tapping and legs swinging, and so I thought to myself, are the younger grades not teaching them how to sit still in their chairs anymore? No, we know that's not true. I started looking at my teaching. Are my students not engaged? Have I become stale and boring? So I started to look at it very closely. But this was happening during instruction, group work, independent work. It was happening across the curriculum. So I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And then along came this little spunky girl into my life. Now, this is an appropriate picture because I have no doubt in my mind that she could keep up with a dolphin all day long. This is my daughter, and she is high energy from breakfast until the time she crashes at bedtime. Our furniture had become a jungle gym during supposedly sedentary activities like watching TV. And my husband and I seriously considered installing a seatbelt on her chair for dinner time and homework time so she didn't wiggle her way out of it. Now, in doing some personal research about meeting my daughter's needs, things became more clear about meeting the needs of all of my students. I wish I had more than 3 minutes to tell you about all of the fascinating things that I learned about the connections between movement and brain development, sensory processing, attention, and memory. Research from the occupational therapy field was clearly showing that special needs students benefited from furniture that allowed for movement. But what about the entire classroom? So the idea for my Track 3 project was born. There was no research out there that dealt with an entire classroom full of learners. Now, we've all changed our instruction to meet the needs of our students, but could environmental modifications like dynamic furniture benefit the entire classroom? Could correctly sized furniture that allowed movement help students be more attentive for longer periods of time? Would it help maximize instructional time? But there's a reason why elementary teachers don't do research projects. It takes so much time. So this is where technology and a little partnering with a former Duquesne professor played a huge part in my ability to see this project through. Some of the technology that I used was from Google. Thank you, Google, for having so many things that I could use. I used Google Forms to take surveys from my students after each rotation so that I could see what kind of furniture they liked and what they were comfortable on. I also created an observation form for my student observers from Duquesne University to use on their iPads. This created a timestamp and allowed them to track on-task behaviors. Every week, my students were filling out these forms, and so all of the data, when you use Google Forms, goes right into Google Sheets. So everything is very organized and easier to sift through when it's compiled in a Google Sheet. I used Google Plus to create a circle with my Duquesne helpers to facilitate easier communication. Blogging was also a large part of the project. My students blogged after each rotation. When they wrote about their thoughts and feelings, they became self-aware, reflective students. I also used a professional blog about the experience so other educators could follow along on the journey. A service called Deliver It linked my blog to my Twitter feed so I could create a PLN. Without the aid of technology, I would not have been able to investigate the use of dynamic classroom furniture. The results? Highly motivated, engaged kiddos, that's for sure. Students who were thinking about their learning style and learning needs, taking responsibility for their own learning, choosing what they needed, and where differences between students were just the norm. And a lot of data still to sift through. But I know I have the tools I need to continue with my passion, which is, of course, providing the best education possible for each and every student.
Morning, everybody. I'm going to speak with you this morning a little bit about one of our favorite topics, formative assessment. So, who in here owns a fitness tracker? Go ahead, put your wrist up. Why did you buy it? What information do you get from it? Are you seeing good results? Let's be honest, these devices are on wrists everywhere. But what's all the hype about anyway? Fitness trackers have 5 basic functions. First, you set a personal goal. Second, you're provided with daily opportunities to achieve that goal. Third, the tracker then gives you continuous, timely, and focused feedback on your progress. Fourth, when you meet your goal, the tracker app helps you to celebrate. And finally, new goals are suggested based upon your most current data. I know what you're probably thinking. Thought this was supposed to be about formative assessment, right? What do fitness trackers have to do with that? Well, let's take a look at some of the key components of formative assessment. 1, identify clear learning targets. 2, provide multiple opportunities for practice of the skills and concepts covered in a low-stakes environment. 3, provide focused feedback to students regarding their progress. 4, celebrate the student's success. And finally, set new learning goals based upon current levels of understanding. When we look at them side by side, they're pretty similar, right? See, the fitness tracker industry has tapped into what we as educators have known for years. Effective formative assessment leads to success. Now, let's chat for just a minute about the motivation and sense of accomplishment that users experience from these trackers. When a Fitbit user gets data that they are 237 steps shy of their daily goal, guess what they are most likely doing before they go to bed? You're right. They are walking around the house trying to log those last 237 steps. And they do this even though there's no penalty for not meeting that daily goal. There's no free time lost the next day, no lower marks for their upcoming evaluation. I'm sure if that was the case, the fitness tracker industry would be a lot less popular. The feeling of accomplishment and knowing that they've met their goals is what's most important. It's validating, and this is the case for our students in our classrooms as well. Now, how can we provide this to our students? By providing high-quality, meaningful, formative assessment activities to our students, and then using the data that we get to drive our instruction. Some common formative assessments that you're probably familiar with are, of course, exit slips, class discussions, observations, tests, and quizzes. But technology opens up a world to additional opportunities for our students to demonstrate what they know in new and innovative ways. It can also help us to better track and communicate about their progress. Instead of a written test, students could create a video lesson teaching others how to use the order of operations correctly in math class. They could take 2 or 3 photos of items around the classroom and write a caption to explain how they relate to a science or social studies concept that you're covering. Instead of book reports, use the iMovie app to have the students create book trailers. They could get instant feedback about their writing by publishing to a blog, or they could even assess their own learning in a game of Kahoot. As educators, we are the students' learning tracker. We are their guides toward achieving their learning goals. When they reach a goal, we light up, just like your fitness tracker, and celebrate their success. If they fall short, we encourage them to keep trying. We adjust to our students and craft unique learning experiences based upon what they show us they need. You see, the process is the product. As Pernille said this morning, think about the what ifs. Start saying yes more. Give students the experiences, feedback, and motivation they need to log those last 237 steps before bedtime. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Madie Kirk, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about my experience with Twitter. It all started with Nikki asking me to present this morning, and I'm into technology, but I like to navigate through it, and I wouldn't consider myself a tech guru, but one thing, if you know about me, I really enjoy collaborating with my colleagues and peers, and so that has always been something really important to me, and that's why working with Twitter and getting back into Twitter has been beneficial for me and my educational journey. So this summer, as I was packing up my room and saying goodbye to my students and colleagues, I was left with that feeling that I get, and that's kind of that need and yearn for connection with my colleagues and staying current with my educational practice. And so that led me to kind of delve into my laptop and not only just look at Edutopia and the articles related to close reading and standards, but it had me go back to Twitter, which I had been a member of for a long time, but hadn't really used it as an educator. So what I decided to do was to kind of delve in and look at some group chats. And these group chats, I began to just kind of search for. I'm a 4th grade teacher, so I searched 4th grade chat, and sure enough, there became lots and lots of teachers like me talking about educational issues, especially in the summertime when we're all off and we're talking about the things that we need to do. these chats happen every day, practically every hour, and there were people that were wondering the same things that I was wondering. How am I going to keep up with the standards? How am I going to do my close reading? And I really enjoyed seeing their ideas and following them. So after some time where I was reading and kind of lurking, I dove into my first ed chat, and I soon found fourth grade chat, PA ed chat, and then the Global Read Aloud 15, which Pernil Rip so proudly presented today, and my class is embarking on that journey starting tomorrow. And as I continued to kind of look at Twitter and build in my chatting, I developed a PLN, which is a professional learning network. And this is a network of people that you follow that are educators, principals, former educators, software companies, speakers. Those are people that share your vision and that you talk with, you learn and listen, and you can just talk about anything that is current in education that you feel passionate about. It can be the mundane classroom issues that you have. It can be behaviors. And so by building that PLN, you have a group of educators who you will see their posts and they will see yours, and it kind of becomes your faculty room on a much larger scale. And then the ultimate goal with Twitter is to tweet. So eventually you have to stop lurking and stop reading and start tweeting. So that was my goal in the summer, is to start tweeting. And I finally remember putting my tweet in and thinking, oh my gosh, I hope I did it right. And someone commented and said, oh, great idea, matey K, and then it went on from there. So you get a lot of feedback and positive feedback from people in your PLN and people on Twitter, especially educators. And so it became a real experience for me and one that I continue to use every day. So today, one last slide, I ask you to join the conversation, and once you get started, you'll find it to be a wonderful resource. I'd like to share one last analogy by Cheryl Beach, and I thought it was really applicable. Twitter is like a river. The river keeps flowing, but sometimes you just might walk past and have a quick look. Sometimes you might hang around and dip your toes in, and other times you might spend hours swimming around. Thank you.
Hi. I'm really nervous, so if you could bear with me. Usually my audience is sitting crisscross applesauce with their fingers in their noses, so if any of you want to do that, it would make me feel much better, because that's what I'm used to. So, but anyhow, so my name is Kristen Maylock, and I teach second grade at Washington. And I was asked to come to you today and ignite you. And please know that this was like 3 days ago. And how do you say no to somebody who takes selfies like this all the time? It's, you know, you can't say no to that. So here I am. So I started to think about all the cool and innovative technology products that I've done, projects, that I could share with you. But then I stopped and I wanted to take a different direction. In order to ignite you, in order to make you passionate about technology, I figured I needed to start by reminding you why you are passionate about teaching and what ignited you to teach in the first place. So I want you to start by thinking, why are you here? What brought you here? And I don't mean, obviously, Jefferson Elementary School auditorium, because we had to be here. But I'm talking about teaching. In a time when our profession is being scrutinized and our performance can be based solely on a test score or a percentage, it's very easy for us to lose our passion and to lose what really ignited you. So to help you remember, I thought I would go first with what brought me here. So while, of course, I'm here for the children, and you are all here too, I'm also here for this little girl. This little girl had a dream. She wanted to be a teacher from as long as she could remember. She's the reason that I'm so passionate about teaching, which ultimately makes me passionate about technology and everything else. She is what ignites me every single day. And obviously that little girl is me. In order to become passionate about technology or anything else, or be ignited, you have to try something totally out of your comfort zone. I want you to remember that you are here for you. Because in my opinion, if you know that you're here for yourself, then you can ultimately, you will be here for them, your students. So as you go through today and you pick your sessions, know that you didn't need me to ignite you. You just needed to remember what ignited you from the very beginning. Because if you do that, if you remember why you're here to begin with, then you will want to go out of your comfort zone. You will want to do sessions and technology projects that maybe might lead you to a new passion in teaching. And you should do what we tell our students to do, which is take risks. And above all, remember why you are here. So have a great day. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacy Chambers. I teach first grade at Foster Elementary. And I'm going to talk to you today about creating digital student folders for data collection using an app called Notability. So just a little bit about my life prior to Notability is that I would start my school year off by creating student files for each of my students. And I'd put in throughout the year work samples and tests that they struggled on, or correspondence back with parents. I would also have a progress monitoring binder with my data for my class that took a lot of time to create to start the school year off, but I'd have it was a lot of paperwork, but I'd have that also to keep that data, as well as a notebook that I would use for my anecdotal notes. But really, when it came time to use them at conference time or meetings, I was starting with my anecdotal notes, and I'd have to look in my progress monitoring binder and then look into the work samples folder. And I was pulling it from all different places that it really wasn't as useful as I wanted to, especially with all the time that I put into collecting all that data. And it was a lot of paperwork, and there was always that chance of losing that paperwork in there. So I wanted some way to make it digital. I love on my Google Drive that I can have that search button up top, and I can search for lesson 3 and everything pops up for it. And I wanted that for my students' data as well. So what Notability does is I create a file or a tab for each of my students, and I can take all that stuff that I would put in their file folder, work samples, and I can take a picture of it and put it right into their folder. Sometimes you have a student who's working on something and they do something and you're like, it's a little bit strange. I kind of want to show somebody else what they did, but I also don't want to send it home incorrect. I'll just snap a picture of it, put it right into their folder, can work with that student, correct it, send that home, and then I can still have that on file what they did originally in there, and it's really easy to do. I can also, all my progress monitoring, I have it in PDF form, and so I can insert it really easily into my Notability, and I can write right on it with my finger as I'm doing the progress monitoring with them. If I want to email it, if I want to print it out, I can email it to myself and print it out, or I can easily email it to a parent or email it to another colleague if I want to share that note with them. My anecdotal notes, you can create a new note. Every time you create a new note, it time and date stamps it for you. And so I can have that information right there, and I can type in the note that I want to say, the quick little anecdotal note, and I can easily search through all my notes that I have all the data all in one place. A new feature with it is that it has an audio portion of it, so I can take a picture of a running record that I'm doing, have that in front of me, and then I can record the child talking and reading as they're doing it. And so again, I can look back and I can show that during conferences and say, here's what I'm seeing that they're doing in class. Here's an example of it right there. So Notability really is an epic app, and that it's really changed the way that I do data collection in my class. It makes it all in one place, really easy to access, and it's been really useful for me in first grade. Thank you.
Good morning. How did I get myself into this? Uh-oh. I can't even adjust the mic. Good start. Okay. First slide. This is how I'm feeling right now. It also sort of sums up how I felt about 8 years ago when I went to start my master's degree in teaching, and they told me I'd have to take a technology integration class. And I thought, what do I know about any of that? I was nervous, overwhelmed, scared. I was certain that I was going to struggle because there was just too much to know, and I didn't know any of it. What I ended up discovering was that I actually had a passion for technology. I came to realize that most of the tools that are out there are really designed to be user-friendly. And what I didn't know how to do, I could easily figure out in minutes just by doing a quick search on Google.
for a tutorial. So there are many teachers out there that aren't even formally teachers but love to share their knowledge of technology and will show you how to do things. So this is what I originally imagined a blogger would look like. I struggled to find a picture of Chris Stengel at his computer, and I could not find one anywhere. I searched through his Facebook, couldn't find it. I just assumed that these so-called bloggers were very computer savvy. They had a lot of technical know-how well beyond what I could ever know. And what I came to realize, I really regret putting this in my slides, is that anyone can be a blogger. It's not just for tech-savvy people. It's easy. It's really easy. I've been trying to convince people of that for years. But if I can be a blogger, you can be a blogger. Anybody can be a blogger. It's really not hard. Right, Kristen? Right? Yeah. So this was actually a slide of just an introductory video I did this year just to introduce myself to my new students. I had about 6 new first graders this year that had never even seen my face. So I sent out the link to the parents, and I got a lot of feedback from the parents that their kids just felt so comforted, even just seeing my face and knowing who they were looking for on the very first day of school. When I first started blogging, I had no idea what I was doing. I just said, I'm going to sign up for this, I'm going to try it, and really my goal was to bridge that connection between home and school. So a lot of my posts, being that I teach first grade, mainly are sharing with parents and grandparents and people in the community just so they can have a window into our classroom and see what's going on. And I've gotten tremendous feedback from parents and everyone that it's been very, very positive. They love that when they want to talk to their child about what they did in school today, they actually have a means to show them what they did. So that was supposed to go with what I just said. And as a parent now, it's interesting to me because I have a 3-year-old who's in preschool, and we all know what they probably are doing in preschool, but every single day that she comes home, I talk to her about, what she did in school that day, and any little nugget that I can get, I latch on to it, and I want to figure out the song that she's trying to sing or whatever it is. This is a screenshot of my class, my very first year, actually. When I started the blog, I didn't know I was going to utilize it in this purpose, but I ended up using it to enhance our embryology project that we do at Hoover. It's an extension that we do in science, and so I embedded a live stream on my blog, and parents and family members and community members and pretty much the entire school was able to watch our chicks hatching live from inside the incubator. And it's just a really cool experience, and I know that things like embedding a live stream on a blog sound really, that sounds scary. How would I ever do that? I taught myself in about 5 minutes. It's real. If I can do it, you can do it. So it was really neat that they could watch with their families from home, and yeah. So this is a recent experience I had with blogging. My main goal, like I said, is really just sharing and trying to bridge that connection between home and school. But you never know when a new idea might arise. So a few weeks ago, I sent home my weekly packet of words to know and, spelling words, the things the kids are, practicing, doing additional work with at home. And I always suggest to them that they, one of their activities throughout the week is try to build your words out of something. And I've never had a parent share out with me how that actually came to fruition at home until a couple weeks ago. And a parent sent me this. It was on the day of Yom Kippur. I think the boy had a little bit of time on his hands, and he built all of his words to know using Legos, and it actually really made my day. I was so excited when I got this. It was just really neat to see them take my idea and run with it. And then my mind started going, and I decided that we were going to turn it into a weekly activity. So now, as a part of their weekly Words to Know, they build at home, and their parents are actually emailing me pictures of how they built their words at home. And so I turned them into a slideshow last week of all the different ways that they built. They were so excited to show me how they built words out of Pokemon characters and stones, and they were really, really got into it. And then it turned into part of my lesson. When we came back into school, we had the slideshow, and we were practicing our words, reading the words, and trying to figure out what they were. So the parents just loved it. They said the kids really got into it. And lastly, I will just give a plug for Chris's blog at the top and these other blogs that happen to be blogs that I follow. One of the other reasons I really am passionate about blogging is I like to learn from other people. I follow Natalie Stafirek. She didn't know she was going to be up there. I follow her blog. I follow Kristen's blog. I follow lots of different blogs throughout the district, and I'm always seeing different things that they're doing in their classroom and go, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to steal that. And I hope that just at some point they might steal something from me. I'm going to be teaching 3 sessions on blogging this afternoon, so if you'd like to learn more, please stop by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rayanne McCosco, library media teacher at Washington Elementary. I'm honored to have been asked to present at our first official Rapid Fire Ignite session. When Chris asked us to talk about something that we're passionate about related to technology, I gave it a lot of thought and really decided upon something that would be incredibly efficient for all of us, considering that time always seems to be one obstacle for all teachers. So that's why I chose to talk about Nearpod, which is an engaging, all-in-one solution for teachers. No matter what you teach, Nearpod can help you present your lessons in units. It will help your students locate, search, analyze, and use information on any topic. And this includes print resources and also online resources. Being independent researchers and problem solvers are very important 21st century skills that our students need. Fortunately, we work in a school all of our schools that have lots of technology available for our students to use. Nearpod can work on any kind of device, including our Chromebooks, our iPads. It works on any different kind of operating system. It eliminates student errors such as typing the wrong web address or clicking on the wrong link. Students won't be calling out and asking you to repeat the name of the website for the 10th time. Nearpod eliminates those confused looks that you often get on your students' faces when they don't know what website they should be viewing or what page they should be reading. Nearpod will also help those poor isolated students in the back of your classroom. I know many of your rooms look just like mine pictured here, where the students are actually staring at the wall. They have no idea what you're doing in front of the room, what you're showing, or what you're talking about. These setups really don't allow for interaction or collaboration. I know what you're thinking. I don't have the time to try something new. I already have a full plate. I'm already working incredibly hard. Well, using Nearpod is really going to actually save you time. It's not adding anything additional to what you're already doing. It's doing something in place of things that you're doing. Nearpod is truly an all-in-one product. It allows you to push content onto your students' devices and control what they view. It works with Chromebooks, iPads, desktops, any operating system, as I mentioned. Students simply join your lesson by putting in a simple 5-letter code. And when you swipe your iPad in order to move to a new page or a different website or lesson, their iPad actually moves at the same time. And you see those images pictured there. Nearpod lets you present information, collaborate with students, assess their understanding, and create reports or students' progress. You can create your own lessons, and there are also pre-made lessons that are available to download from Nearpod. This easy-to-use toolbar gives you an idea of the many options that are available for your lessons. You can add slides, video, audio, PDF, links, websites, and more. You can also put polls in order to ask your students questions. You can include surveys, quizzes. You can import presentations or documents that you've already made. This isn't starting anything from scratch. You can put any PowerPoint presentation, Google Doc, Google Slide, anything into Nearpod. You can include many different types of information in your lesson. These are some websites that have been embedded, drawings, slides, and so much more. Some pieces allow students to collaborate among each other. Others allow the students to submit completed work to you. Then you decide whether you want to share that student's piece with the whole class in order to use it as an example or to keep it private. When choosing your workshops today, think about what your passion is. You've heard from so many different, incredible, talented people who will have resources that are available for you to meet your personal goal. Enjoy exploring the Tech and Wellness sessions today. Thank you for your time.
Last November, I woke up in Manhattan to this view. The next day when I flew home, I had to go to marathon that day. So I actually was more nervous to fly home than I was to run the New York Marathon. I actually was more nervous. I was so stoked when I found out that I was chosen to run. And believe me, you know anything about I was so stoked when I found out that I was chosen to run. And believe me, you know anything about running a marathon, I don't care boss drive that qualifying car. I was chosen to run with the men's health organization called November. And if you get our wellness emails, you men's health organization called November. And if you get our organization that November must help pushing out the and why this meant so much to me. I've always loved exercise. And why this meant so much to me. As I've gotten older, I've always loved exercise. I wanted to teach students. And as I've gotten older, I knew I wanted to teach it. I wanted to teach students. I wanted to be a part of the school day for them. My dad has been my biggest fan my whole life. The state championship. My dad has been my biggest fan my whole life. Championship swimming team. He fought for our country in Vietnam. He was on a state championship swimming conditions. He fought and he has 2 cents put in, survived in those crazy conditions. Blood pressure and he has 2 cents. So how could this guy, back in his prime, could compete at any level? So how could those guys for our country and survive, compete at any level, like hurling conditions? What happened? Survive? Where did the ball get dropped? Hurling conditions. My goal and what I'm passionate about is helping my students as well as colleagues realize that those wills is helping my students as well as colleagues to realize that those wills are so easy for us to do. It's sometimes it's more difficult. So easy for us to do. Sometimes it's more difficult. This stand was a research study done by Dr. Chuck Coleman at the University of Illinois. This stand was a research study done by Dr. Chuck Coleman at the University. This is a composite brain scan of 20 students. This is a brain at rest. It's like this is a composite brain scan on 20 students. This is your brain at rest. It's like this is your brain on exercise. And if the colors are showing up a little bit better, you would see that there's hot spots. So the brain is red and it's orange. Showing up a little bit better, you would see that there's hot spots. I know every day, and it's orange. My heart rate monitors that I give the students. I know every day, they are getting their brains this level that I give the students when they go to their second and their third. Getting their brains to this level so that then when they go to their second and their third and their fourth, that is what I am passionate about. They're going with making sure not only do they lead with that is what I am passionate about. To learn, making sure also that they're learning how the brain lives and able to learn, but also that they're learning they're not always going to have lives and that they're not always going to have the coach tell them that. They're not always going to have initiative and get motivated so that they don't turn into what my dad did. Take initiative and get motivated and now so that they don't isn't a luxury granted. He has to do it because he has and now you're health isn't a luxury day. He has to do it because he has a 3-year-old daughter and he walks every day because he's got red meat in his smoothie. He's scary. He walks the stress test, which he very well. So I thank you all so much for putting up with the emails that don't I send about wellness. I thank you all so much for putting up with the emails that I have about wellness and just to make sure that you all can get a little bit of wellness. The passion that I have for this is to make sure that you all can get a little bit of wellness.
So, what is my passion? In 3 minutes, selfies, Green Bay Packers, blogging. Actually, none of those things are what I'm going to talk about today. But, other things I'm not passionate about. Apologies to those in the technology department. Servers, server racks, SANs, LANs, wires, fiber, sometimes fiber. These things are necessities. They have to happen. We need them to have infrastructure, a basis on which we can use technology to get into our classrooms. Right? Many of you know me personally. You know that what I am passionate about is these 2 boys. Right? Sorry, I have a cold. So, it is the greatest privilege in my life to work in the district where they go to school, right? And I know that those of you that have them love them, and that if you did have them, you would love them, right? And what I also know is that they are privileged to go to a district where technology is used to increase their learning, to affect a learning that without the technology would not happen, right? So here are some, that's what I just said, okay? When technology is used in a purposeful way, when it affects a learning, right? Here are some examples. Anecdotally, we piloted blogs 07, right? And we asked a bunch of the first teachers to run it. What did you think of the blogs, right? And the most stunning piece of feedback from that was not a point of data, but rather a response in the survey that said, I got my most insightful feedback from my quietest kids, right? So this is a technology that gives voice to the quiet when maybe the focus was not public speaking, right? Maybe the focus was not standing in front of everybody and telling what you think or raising your hand and saying it out loud, but maybe just contributing your voice to the social knowledge, right? And this tool, blogging, allowed it. And without the blog, wouldn't have had it. That is a value proposition. That is the time when you want to see technology in a classroom. I'm passionate about modeling, right? So anybody, well, obviously, but I'm talking about Gandhi-style modeling of behavior, right? So if somebody is going to be using Facebook, if somebody is going to be using Twitter in a responsible, meaningful, valuable way, I want to be that guy doing that as well. I want to model what it can be like to be positive. Many years ago, we had an incident at one of our middle schools involving MySpace. That's how many years ago it was, right? Some kids went crazy, did some bad things, right? And something that resonated with me was the notion that where did we ever have the chance to tell that kid different, to teach that child who made that bad choice a different behavior? And the answer is we didn't, right? Because we shut him off, we blocked it out, we said it's evil. It's inherently evil. We're not going to touch it. We're not going to even pretend it exists. So the child goes home, maybe latchkey, maybe not, maybe a laptop in the bedroom upstairs, right? Learned it on his own, and when you trust students to learn these technologies on their own, they'll get it wrong. 99.9999% of the time, Six Sigma, right? We need to be the models of how it can be a positive, productive thing, and what you need to look out for. And I'm passionate about showing that. Okay? I'm also not passionate about building domes, right, with unicorns, right? And fake little contrived environments where everything is perfectly safe because they're going to turn 18. And we're going to send them to college and say, good luck, it's different out there. No, I don't want that. I want them to hit college and say, oh yeah, I've been doing that for years, right? Why should our learning environment be any less authentic than their environment at 4 p.m. or their environment when they go off to college? So I'm passionate about that. Oh, I just said that. Check that out. Very nice. Stick that up on the tape, will you? All right. All right, finally, again, I'm passionate about the boys, and I'm passionate about those things, and that's my 3 minutes. So, Pernille Ripp, thank you.
When Chris asked me to do an Ignite, I said, does it have to be about tech? And he said, no, and I went, ooh. So bear with me as I go on a bit of a 3-minute passionate rant. My love of reading never had to survive my childhood. When I grew up, teachers weren't really that bothered with what we read or how much we read every night, just that we read. They didn't ask us to keep logs, to record minutes, to stick Post-it notes whenever we had a thought. They didn't tell us which box to pick from or give us a label. Instead, they gave us a book, pointed to a chair, and they told us to read. Come up for air when you're done. Some may shudder at the lack of instruction that I was put through as a child. After all, where was all of the teaching? And yet within this brutally simplistic approach, read, and then read some more, was an immense amount of wisdom. Kids need time to read. Kids need choice. Kids need to be allowed to self-select books, and then when they're done reading, they should be asked to have a conversation, get another book, not fill out a packet. So if we hold these truths to be self-evident, I wonder how has so much of our reading instruction gotten so far off track. I think we teachers are part of the problem. I think our silence while we seethe inside at the new initiatives being dictated to us means that we are now complicit in the killing of the love of reading, because for too long we have been too nice, unwilling to rock the boat too much. We have held our tight smiles as experts sold our districts more curriculum, more things to do, more interventions, more repetitions. We have stayed silent because we were afraid of how our words would be met, and I cannot blame any of us. Standing up and speaking out is terrifying, especially if you're speaking out against something within your own district, but we cannot afford to stay silent anymore. With the onslaught of more levels, more logs, more things to do with what they read, all in the name of deeper understanding, we have to speak up. Reading is about time to read first, about falling in love with a book, not all the other things. So if we are sacrificing time to read to instead teach children more strategies, then we are truly missing the point of what we should be doing. So I declare myself a reading warrior, and I believe you should as well. No more reading logs to check whether kids are reading. No more levels used to stop children from self-selecting books they actually want to read. No more time-standardized tests to check for comprehension. Being a fast reader does not make you a good reader. No more reading projects that have nothing to do with reading. No more reading packets simply to produce a grade. No more rewards, prizes, stickers, lunches with the principal. We cannot measure a great reader by how many pages a school has read. Don't publish your test scores. Publish instead how many children have fallen in love with a book. How many recommendations have been made from student to student. Publish how many books have needed to be replaced because of worn pages. No child is helped when we protest in silence, when we protest in the teacher lounge or in our homes. We have to find the courage to speak up for the very students we serve. We have to allow students to read books that they choose and to allow them to self-monitor how much they're reading and then believing them when they tell us their truths. It is time to take back our reading instruction and truly make it about what the kids need and not what others tell us that they need. One voice can be a whisper or a protest. We make the choice when we decide to make a difference. Are you with me?
Okay. If I could just have one more round of applause for all of our presenters. I thought that was very brave. All right, that was a new format. I hope everyone enjoyed it, got something out of it, maybe had some thoughts about what sessions you want to make sure you get to after lunch, which begins now. So enjoy your lunch. See you back here at 1 o'clock for your sessions.